Hello, hello, welcome. Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from in the United States today. Please type in the chat where you're joining from and how many people are watching with you. If you are able, it would also be a good time to acknowledge the native land which you occupy. If you could do that, we could see your voices. I see some folks have already started coming in. If you're in a in-person host site, feel free to check in as a single check-in with how many are with you at your site. And if you feel like it, you can also ask some folks in the room with you to shout out where they came in from and type that in. I'll start to read some of the folks' responses who are in the room now. So we've got Robert, we've got Liz, thanks for being here from Westchester. We've got Susan in Oak Park, Christopher in Lawndale, North Lawndale in Chicago. Welcome, Christopher. We've got Amy from Providence, Rhode Island, just her. Claudia from Chicago, Brianna from Oak Park, Timothy in Orlando, Florida, Seminole territory, Jim in Oak Park, Karen in Evanston, Meta Patel, thanks for being here in Chicago, Alette, Oswego, Illinois, Maria, Oak Park, Suzanne from San Diego. We've got Northwestern checking in. Thanks, you all. In Evanston, Illinois, there's 10 of you right now. Betsy in Lakeview, Claudia from the Council of the Three Fires in Chicago, Mariah from Chicago, Elizabeth from Naperville, Potawatomi land. All right, please keep checking in. Love seeing you all fill this space. I will move us along in the interest of time. I'm Anna Garcia Doyle, the Executive Director of One Earth Collective, which produces the One Earth Film Festival. Welcome to this festival screening event. We hope it will provide us all with rich opportunities for learning, a brave and safe space for important conversations, and a way to move from inspiration to action. We could not do this work without the support of our sponsors and partners. Thank you to Northwestern University, the Chicago Public Library, the Walter S. Mander Foundation, Green America, and Good Heart Work Smart Foundation. Another quick note, if your circumstances allow, please donate to support One Earth's nonprofit year-round screening events, youth programs, and more at oneearthfilmfest.org. We gratefully welcome you to One Earth's 11th festival season, and we invite you to join us in turning the tide on our climate crisis. The festival uses the power of film to create a sea change on topics of environment and those intersected with environment, like racial, social, and economic justice. This year, we've adapted a hybrid format where all screenings are virtual, with some accompanying in-person events taking place in the Chicago area. Whether live or virtual, we remain committed to our unique model of gathering and community to raise awareness of the issues, engage in dialogue, and be inspired to act. A powerful image and call to collective action in light of this year's festival theme, Turn the Tide, are the words of Japanese writer Ryanosuke Satoru. Individually, we are one drop. Together, we are an ocean. Our event will take place in 4 parts. Soon, we'll introduce you to some folks who will help us have a rich discussion after the film. Then, we'll watch the film together. After the film, we'll unpack its themes and a facilitated dialogue with our panelists. Please use the chat to share your thoughts, ideas, or questions. We'll end by sharing concrete actions you can take to be part of the solution. These suggested actions come from our panelists and action partners. I'd now like to make a few brief acknowledgments. The first is that, as we reframe narratives around justice, environment, and equitable solutions to our climate crisis, we acknowledge the many filmmakers, film subjects, facilitators, and panelists joining this and other fest events. Thank you. Your wisdom and experiences help us spark and sustain actions for the protection of our One Earth and for the just treatment of its resources and its people. The second acknowledgement is that One Earth Collective is based in Chicago, the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, and home to many other tribes, including today, peoples from over 100 tribal nations. Despite this, there are currently no federally recognized tribes in Illinois, due in part to colonization, relocation, and genocide. One Earth sustains its commitment to presenting films that center Indigenous stories and voices. We believe that beyond acknowledging the native lands we each occupy, we must lift up Indigenous voices and support the work of First Nations groups. If you're in the Chicago area, please support the important work being done by the American Indian Center Chicago, the Chicago American Indian Community Collaborative, Chi Nations Youth Council, and others. And watch for the Field Museum exhibition Native Truths, Our Voices, Our Stories, co-curated with collaborators from more than 100 tribes, opening this May. A third acknowledgement is that shared agreements can help keep our conversations safe and respectful. Please observe the following agreements when participating. Put aside your preconceptions, acknowledge your privilege, internalize what you've learned, approach the conversation with respect, engage your active listening, use I statements and get comfortable with your own story. One last thing before we meet our facilitator and program participants. If you're active on social media, tell people that this is happening. Amplify these voices and be a part of the community we're building here together. The hashtags for the festival are hashtag OEFF 2022 and hashtag Turn the Tide. And now I'd like to turn it over to our facilitator to introduce themselves, the panelists, and our film.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Lucci. This is my 10th year facilitating at the Fest, so I'm always excited. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year. And thanks to our wonderful tech team, we're accompanied tonight by folks from 2 in-person Chicago area screenings, Chicago Public Library's Austin branch and Northwestern University. So I hope you'll engage in our conversation tonight as well. And I think we have an intro video that we might watch from the sites now.
Welcome to the 11th Annual One Earth Film Festival. I'm Joanne Willis, Branch Manager of the Austin Branch Library.
Welcome. I'm Julie Kaling, Associate Director for Sustainability at Northwestern University. Thank you for joining us for this screening of The Ants and the Grasshopper. We hope you enjoy the film.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. So I want to invite us, there are so many things pulling at our attention in this moment in 2022, and I'd invite us all, just like our team did before the call, to take a deep breath together. So wherever you are, just tune out, turn off some distractions, bring yourself into your body by taking a deep inhale and exhale if it feels comfortable to do so. The other reason I like to get us in sync and breathing together is now we are co-conspirators. And this work is impossible to do alone, and we need to go together. So tonight we are becoming co-conspirators, breathing together, hopefully acting together. And as our amazing panelist reminded me this week, it's such a gift that we actually have this time to pause from our daily lives and consider this serious matter of climate change. And so many around the planet, including the stars of our film tonight, have already been thrust into this crisis and are actually living into solutions to survive. I think this will be us soon, but for now we have that privilege to be talking about how we're going to act. How many movies have you watched in the last 2 years during the quarantine? So often we watch movies and we don't take the time to deeply reflect on what we've seen, how we feel about it, or even pause to consider the implications it has on our lives and what we might do about it. One of the things I love about the One Earth Film Fest is that ahead of time for months, the team has been consciously reviewing and reflecting to find movies that have the potential to transform us. So tonight we look forward to engaging you in some deeper reflection, some deep dialogue, and then moving us all to action by watching, after we watch Raj Patel's movie, The Ants and the Grasshopper. So in our 11th year here, the One Earth Film Fest continues to grow an ever-widening community. And thanks to the efforts of Anna, who you just met, and her team, who so passionately and lovingly do this work of community building, we have two inspiring panelists tonight who are going to join me in discussion after the film. So let's join me in giving a warm welcome first to Nateo, Chelem, Carneau, who is a co-founder of the Cicero Community Farm, just down the street from me. I can't wait to go actually tour it. So, hey, Nateo, so happy that you're here with us. I can't wait to get into dialogue with you. We also have tonight Dr. Akilah Martin, who is a soil scientist and enthusiast, a relationship consultant with AM Rootbuilders, a contributor to Chicago Grows Food, and co-host of a podcast called Roots Watering Hole. Hey, Dr. Akilah, so happy. We are going to have some fun tonight. You're going to feel it. It's going to be like sitting around a fire, the passion of these two amazing individuals. And we're going to learn more about their passions and projects later on after the film, so please join us after the discussion. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the film. It's called The Ants and the Grasshopper. And you might want to put aside the Aesop fable story that you know and just open to why this story might be relevant in the movie. Anita Chitaya, one of our main actors here, has many gifts. She can help bring abundant food from dead soil. She can make men fight for gender equality. And she can end child hunger in her village. But to save her home from extreme weather, she faces her greatest challenge: persuading Americans that climate change is real. Traveling from Malawi to America, she meets climate skeptics and despairing farmers. Her journey takes her across all the divisions shaping the United States, from the rural-urban divide to schisms of race and class and gender, to the thinking that allows Americans to believe that they live on a planet different from everyone else. It will take all of her skills to help Americans free themselves from a logic that is destroying the earth. Our film is 74 minutes long. I invite you all to sit back, relax, and let's enjoy this film together, and I'll see you on the other side.
Welcome back, everyone. Invite you back into the chat, back into our discussion. So I'm really excited to bring in the panel. We have been virtually watching the film together and then together with you and kind of sharing our own chats and reflection. But before I do that, I want to ask you our opening line after every film at the One Earth Film Festival. What scenes or people or lines in the film stood out for you? And you can go ahead and put those right in the chat. I know some folks have been putting, there were some powerful lines in here that we've been sharing. Yeah, we can teach one another and we can forgive. Thanks, Mary. And that one person I sure wish I had met when she was still on the planet is Grace Lee Boggs. We have to live more simply so others can simply live. A few of you are shouting that out for sure. They don't appreciate what they have, right, Jim? We Americans. I laughed when maybe I should have cried. So happy to see Winston come around. So go ahead and just put it in the chat, thinking of something that stood out. We like to start just with our head, our mind processing before we move into our heart and our hands here. Yeah, some gratitude. Awesome how gardening is a common language, Brianna says. Thanks, Anna, for popping that in here. Good, and you can feel free to continue to drop in your comments, your questions. We'll have a team fielding those as I begin our discussion with our amazing panelists, who I'm so grateful have set aside some time to be with us tonight. And I'm also so grateful for their work in the world, which I have been researching this week. So I'm going to just introduce each of them with their short bio here. I've noticed some interesting threads between these two amazing humans. They're both soil lovers and community makers and what I call social change artists. So get ready to be inspired. First, I'd like to reintroduce Nateo, Chelem, Carneau. And they're a farmer and the co-founder of the Cicero Community Farm. And I want to find out how they did that. No easy feat. Nateo's community disciplines are in plants, soil, and nature. Within these disciplines, they tend to the relational filaments between soil, nature, community, and queerness, which Western imperial ideologies have historically degraded. Okay, we could talk about all of that for the next hour. Welcome, Nateo. Can't wait. All right. And I also like to welcome to our virtual stage here, Dr. Akilah Martin, who is a soil scientist and enthusiast, a relationship consultant with AM Rootbuilders, check it out, contributor to Chicago Grows Food, and a co-host of the podcast Roots Watering Hole. As a certified coach, Dr. Martin supports her clients in building high energy relationships. Look at, she just met Nateo, and look what's happening over here. Dr. Martin's passion work includes enhancing relationships of individuals and communities to environmental and natural resources. She's abundantly living life through her two core values of freedom and joy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we will I'll start with my questions and then be working to field in your questions. And so I do welcome in our virtual audience, our folks at Northwestern and Austin. Let's just start, Nateo and Dr. Akilah, with your initial reaction to the film. Any particular scene resonate with you just as we begin to unpack this very layered film? And why don't we, great, Nateo, come on in.
Yeah, very, very layered. First of all, I'm super honored to be here. Thank you all so much for the invite. I mean, Dr. Akilah Martin's work is like one of the reasons that I myself, got into this work. You learn about people doing things and it really motivates you to act accordingly, So I'm really honored to be here. But some of the first things that I thought of watching this film is my family comes from Mexico, where we come from a lineage of migrants who came to the United States through the Bracero program. And so, the first thing that I started thinking about was how, there's this exceptionalization that happens of racialized people for just surviving, right? For trying to survive, and how so often I feel that absolves people in positions of power of their responsibility to confront what contributions they have to creating these necessities of survival. And so that was one of the first things that came into my mind, for sure. And I really love, and we mentioned a little bit about this before, but I really love that gender deconstruction was highlighted as being one of the most important parts of our community work, like one of the pivotal parts. But I would love to hear Dr. Akilah's thoughts on this too, so I'm going to pass it over.
Oh, that's beautiful. And in fact, I think that gave Anita some of her confidence, right? And I'm thinking, wow, that seems like nearly impossible. But come on in, Dr. Akilah, please.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Nateo, for bringing that and bringing me into the space. And I echo everything that Nateo just said. And some of the other things that came to me, which I said to the group previous to us being here now, was just the opportunity to even contemplate what's happening. We have that luxury to do that, and they don't. They do not. You watch the film, you see they do not have time to do that. They need solutions. They need them now. It's for their survival, and therefore they're thriving. The other thing I would say that stood out for me was really seeing the people of diaspora and creating and establishing villages and really reconnecting with the earth and providing a different way of life. And as the young lady said, that they had to really rethink their values of, their lifestyle values. And as you said, Susan, my values are power and joy. And I feel like not power and joy, freedom and joy, excuse me. If things aren't allowing me to be feeling free or joyful, I'm not there for it. So I definitely want to be as as collaborative and energy exchange as I can. And I love to see how Anita and Esther came to the United States. And then what really stood out for me is when she said, it is so green here. And if you recall in the scenes before where they are, it was very much tannish brown, right? Because it was mostly bare soil because the river had dried up. And so just for them to see that, it had to be overwhelming. It was overwhelming for me. So thank you for allowing me to state that.
Yes, great. Plenty more too. Thank you so much. I really feel like the film came alive, the connectivity towards the end of the film, you know, where you were talking, when they were talking about village and they start singing, right? To me, which is just evidence of that joy of which you speak. Yeah. I'm also thinking about the patience that it took for Anita and the villagers, from pulling up water, from waiting for their clothes to dry and listening to these American farmers. I was just really struck. Patience is not one of my strong suits, but I just thought, wow. And also researching the director of this film, Raj Patel, it took him 10 years to make this film, which is really interesting too, right? And as we talk about timing and the urgency and when to know about timing. And what is interesting to me is that they shifted the direction of the film. It took so long because Anita started asking different questions. And so they decided to tell a different kind of story. And so we also hear in the film how she has all these questions. And I was struck this time watching it, why it took so long for anybody to ask Anita or Esther a question, that they were just listening so much. So I thought I might start there with each of you too, is how important the questions we are asking are that motivate us. So, you know, curious what's on your heart, what's moving you, what question is moving you through the days right now. So maybe from the film, but just maybe this is an opportunity to kind of tell a little bit more about your story from that perspective. So Nateo, come on in.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if it's so much that I have questions, right? I feel like I live in a neighborhood, Cicero, that is right next to Little Village. Both neighborhoods are predominantly, you know, Black and brown, and they experience environmental racism at much higher degrees than a lot of other neighborhoods on the north side. And so we don't really have time to be asking questions. You know, all we have time for is like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And so I'm glad you brought this up because I really wanted to bring up right. So Karari Olvera is really inspirational to me, is a transgender activist here in Chicago. And she mentioned something a really long time ago about passive language versus active language, right? Passive language says trans women are being killed, women are being killed. Active language says men are killing women. So it changes the conversation entirely. It changes the dynamic and the intensity of the conversation to trace the origin of the problem. And so I really I thought a lot about how people are saying the climate is changing, the climate is changing. And that's really passive language, right? Because we're saying the climate is changing and we're not saying industry and greed is perpetuating the degradation of land. That's not what we're saying. We're not tracing the origin. We're making it sound like almost as if it's the climate's thing that the climate has to figure out. And how I feel so much would change, again, when we start to change from passive language to active, when we really start to be no, it's not that nature's volatility is a problem, right? The problem is consumer capitalism, imperialism, and white supremacy, and how all of those things have partnered up to exploit nature and exploit racialized people. And so that's really I don't have questions. I'm just I need everybody to get together and just let's do it, let's do it. But, yeah, I'll pass it over to Dr. Akilah for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. You are doing it. Yeah.
Thank you, Nateo. I'm with you, but I do have a whole bunch of questions, but I won't use this time to ask them. But I'm so glad that you brought up language, Nateo, because that's something that I have been challenging in the work that I do and how we use language and how language it can do so many things, right? It's very powerful in how you feel and how you act, right? And so how we describe things, how we intentionally describe things, and really thinking about the assets, really being progressive about how we say things, how we communicate, and communicate not just through words, but through our body language, through our actions, through our beliefs, through our connections with each other and through, our connections with the earth. Thank you so much for bringing language into the conversation, Mateo. So one of the things I would say as far as a question, Susan, and thank you for that, asking us that, I would say how do we change our eating? How do we become more in harmony with the earth, with our eating habits? And how do we really demand from the researchers, the people who are writing articles, the movies that we see, the books that we're reading, just all the different energies that we absorb, how do we demand that they start being more intentional and conscious about the things that they are communicating to us? So, thank you.
Yes. Oof. Lots to take in there. Yeah, let's take a breath. Thank you. So many pearls of wisdom. I'm watching them all like, okay, where are we going next with this? Another question related to that I have that I think might take us in that direction is, how does our disconnect from the earth and soil really perpetuate our denial, perpetuate the impact here? And I'm kind of trying to tease out the community, since you're both community builders. I'm thinking about the village that you named there. So what can we do? And maybe it's there in the eating, and certainly it's there in the language, how we even speak about being, part of this planet. How do we even communicate that? And I think I read somewhere or an interview, Dr. Akilah, that you said without community, there's no liberation. Right. And I'm thinking of Nateo starting this, thinking of all the energy, that you have, that you started a community farm. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more for each of you about that, how you build community, why that's important to connect us to the soil.
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, I got into this work because I noticed a very clear alignment between how, again, my parents are immigrants, and so my entire family is, and again, we grew up in the south side of Chicago and in Pilsen, and in, neighborhoods that were largely racialized. And so I started really young, probably like junior high, to see the connections between how racialized folks are treated and how we treat the environment, and how that's the same. Like it's the same, and so, it took me a while to kind of start to pull at that, but at the end of the day, it started, for me, it really started to just make sense that, if we can create a culture of nurture for land, we have to do that. We have to, almost by proxy, do that for the people who have historically cared for it. But, my mom has this saying, there's this saying in Spanish that says, ojos que no ven, corazón que no siente, which is eyes that don't see, heart that doesn't feel. And so, we have learned through imperialism and colonialism that we exploit the land, and that's our relationship with it. And so if that's our relationship with land, how can we ever have a different relationship with the people who have cared for it, through all of these years? And I think one of my favorite quotes of all time about land is actually a white farmer's quote, Wendell Berry. And he says, the history of the white man's use of land is a scandal. And it's just true, because he talks so much about how the historical context of colonialism has created a culture where we destroy intimacy by assigning non-consensual labor to our land practices. And I really think that reintegrating people into land practices in a consensual way, in a way where we are choosing to be there, and we are choosing to be there to create sovereignty, that is really where we start to build community, because we're giving people choice, we're giving people autonomy. It's like Dr. Akilah said, it's about freedom, right? It's about freedom and about joy. And how do we create that if we do not rectify the relationship that we have with where a lot of these violations took place? And so yeah, that's kind of where it comes from for me, right? Once we start taking care of the land, we start taking care of the people, and they have to happen together. They have to happen together.
Woo! Yes. Love it.
Thank you, Nateo. I would say, if you could, when you have time, just step outside and just reintroduce yourself to the soil. Say, hey, girl, hey, whoever you are. Hey, soul entities, how are you? here I am. I'm here with you in partnership. And you can tell the health of the community through the soil, because if you really think about it, soil is the natural filter of our water. So if our soil isn't healthy, clearly that means our water isn't healthy. And it also means our plants aren't healthy. And it also means the animals aren't healthy, right? Because animals eat the plants. We eat the plants. And some of us are carnivores. We eat animals as well. So all of that in that system says something about the health of the community. And so if you have a chance, start noticing things outside your door. If you have trees in your area, take care of them, because it's really our responsibility, whether you own a home or live in an apartment or condo or wherever, it is our responsibility to take care of our trees. And as we're talking about climate change, a city like Chicago, we have a lot of things happening. I don't know if you all have been a part of all this wind we've been having, all of the rain, the floods that we have, all of that is something that's happening with, as far as climate change goes. And we can start now to shift the narratives. We can start to shift our internal narratives that we tell ourselves, the stories that we tell, to be able to be in partnership with the earth, to be in partnership with our environment, so that we can create a more healthy and just community for each of us. And I would say, think about what you're eating. Think about, where do you eat? Where does it come from? Remember that soil starts from rock, right? So any rocks starts the process of soil. Soil is so diverse, it's so expansive. It's been dislocated. It holds so many secrets. It holds so many ancestral narratives and stories. It is so powerful. And I'm going to stop because I'm a soil enthusiast and I have so much to say about soil, but I definitely want you to, at the first, if you could, reintroduce yourself to the soil. Just step outside right now, smell it, be a part of it, touch it, love it. You could do art with it, you can paint with it, you can make jewelry with it. I mean, it's just awesome. And not even talking about the food that it grows, right? We're just looking at the arts and creative part of that.
Yeah, right. Wow. Well, you both talk about this responsibility that we have to carry forward in different ways too. And I think I have heard from each of you about how this is critical to our healing, and especially mental health right now too. So I wonder if you can each speak to that a little bit. It seems that I think that's even part of your mission, Nateo, is well-nourished minds and bodies, right? So I'd love to hear. I think that's a enticing way to relate with this as well,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think some people have been introduced to the health properties of nature through the pandemic, right? Which, I remember I had been saying so for such a long time to all the circles that I'm in. I'm like, I wish something would just happen that would make people understand how important nature is. And I really wish I would have been more specific, in retrospect, but it happened. People really started to see the importance of it. And the thing is, again, to BIPOC communities, this is not lost on us. This has never been lost on us. We understand that nature is and I don't know if you all believe in spirituality or whatever, but the point of spirituality is that it connects you to a form of health that may not be reachable through, the imperial medical world. And so it connects us to that. And so I really think that, again, getting back into relationships with nature that are about choice, and that are about choice from a harm reduction lens, I think we start to see that, hey, if I'm treating this place that I belong to better, maybe that translates to me too. Maybe that translates to my family members. Maybe that translates to, a much wider web of care. And so I just want to plug an elder in really quick. So
please.
One of my elders, Opulence Abundance, who is also a queer nature enthusiast, once told me that it's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the nurtured. And so I think nature teaches us that, and even in the way that both of those words are structured, right? Nature, nurture, nature, nurture. We're nurtured by nature, and we have to learn to do the same in return. And so that's what I think of, right? It's not survival of the fittest. Nature is not about survival of the fittest. It's about survival of the nurtured. Things that are nurtured survive. And I think that's why we feel a sense of health when we spend time in nature because we feel nurtured. And so that's how I think, like, you know, making better choices in nature and our mental health, that's how it kind of comes together. But yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. I love that. And I have a suspicion that there is an underground movement of a culture of care. And so you're speaking all around that, I think, as well. And I think that's what we're up to in the face of this, and what's going to upend the patriarchy and all of it. Dr. Akilah?
Nateo always does an explosive response. And I feel like everything you say, and I want to say, so thank you so much, Mateo. I would say for me, what came to mind is Ubuntu. So I am because you are. And I believe that oneness, that kinship, that interconnectivity is really important to our healing. And I also think that relationship with yourself is really important. So really knowing who you are, how you show up every day, the thoughts that you have, the beliefs, the actions, the energy transfers, the exchanges, all of that is important to your healing, and how you are in relationship to others around you, with the earth. I think that's really important to your healing. Balance and movement and breath are also very important. And, you know, mutual aid is very important. I think it's going to be a huge movement around mutual aid in the future, because especially if we're thinking about, you know, community building, what are the assets in the community? How can we exchange those so that we all are thriving and abundantly thriving, not just thriving and not just surviving, but also very much thriving. And healing is so important. And most of the healing that we know can come from the earth, right? Not from the pharmacy. You could grow all types of herbs. There's so many herbalists around that you can talk to for physical healing, for, you know, mental and spiritual health. And I've just been thinking about mental health justice, because there's so much happening in the last 2 years, right? And we all are going to need each other. And I'm going to say it right now to all of you all, we need you. So thank you.
Yes. Wow, so beautiful. I am looking, I think our audience is just wrapped. I haven't seen any questions. I see lots of love and lots of comments, but we do have a few more minutes left. So if you have a question and want to pop it in the chat, folks, that we're not getting to, please do. The movie's been called A Meditation on Change. I want to talk about this concept of change, and it's raised in the movie. How do we change the whole system? And you've got to have will. There's lots of different comments, but certainly Raj Patel feels that we can, right? He is a practical optimist. He calls himself the director of this film, right? Is I think why he made it. And we believe at the One Earth Film Festival here that we can actually help be part of that change and change people's minds through film and wonderful panelists. And we'll move to action in a few minutes. But just curious, well, let me add one more piece, that Anita's theory of change seems to be like, let me go show up on your doorstep and tell you about this, and certainly you'll do something as a result. So just kind of put those in the mix and see how you react. How do you feel about this massive change that we need right now? It's a big one. Touch any part of it you would like.
Yeah, it is a big one. I think there's a saying that's going around that I saw not too long ago that was like, you can either let the like bad parts, right, lead you into like chaos and despair, or you can fall in love with the creativity of the solutions. And I do not remember who said that. I don't remember who said that. I'm so sorry, folks. I don't remember who said that. But I did read that recently, and it's like, it's really a wonderful time to be falling in love with solutions. You know, like Dr. Akilah just started talking about like, yo, why are we not paying more attention to our soil? Like, we need to pay attention to soil, right? So that's kind of what I think about, right? Like right, you can either lead yourself into despair because of the chaos and the all of the horrible things that are happening, or you can like really fall in love with all of these ways that you can create solutions. And nature is such an accepting and forgiving force, and we do not give it enough credit for that. Often we talk about nature like it's this dominating, you know, careless thing, and it's really not. You know, it works with you if you choose to work with it. And so I think we just need more folks who choose to work with it. But yeah, I definitely, I'm so curious to hear what Dr. Akilah has to say too. So I mean, that's where I'm at about it.
Thank you. Powerful.
Susan, you said something about change. I just want to make sure I have the question appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, really just asking is this massive transformative change we need? Do you feel it's possible? Yeah, or how would you approach it? Or any part of that feels like an important thread through the film.
Yeah, it does. And I like when Anita, or was it Esther? It was Esther. She said that that change starts with denial, and then you begin to debate it, and then you go back and you start really, reflecting and thinking about it. And that's what we saw in the documentary, is that they had an interruption, if you will, right? Anita and Esther came to the farmers, had a conversation. I don't know what transpired, what we didn't see on film, but I'm assuming that they told, a little bit more deeper story about what it looks like over there in their village. And so, yes, I do believe change can happen, and I believe it will happen. I don't know if it's going to be a change that we want. I don't know that change is ever anything that we want, right? But I do think that it can happen. I've been thinking so long, what are some of the ways to foster, the ways of change? And, change is, you have to be agile, you have to be flexible, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to want it. And I feel like if one of the questions that I asked, and I think Raj asked on that podcast, was, do we really want to see everyone thrive? And I think that's a question that should be asked of all of us, because if we say yes to that, then that means that evolution is inevitable. And hopefully that we will be more intentional and, look to our ancestors and their wisdom and, more indigenous practices to move forward in creating a world, right, or space or community that is, it's beautiful, right? That you love to go outside your door and be a part of that, be a part with, of that with people as well as the environment. So.
Yes. Great. I'm just looking at a couple of comments from our audience before I move us into our action items. Julie in Worcester, Ohio, tipping points of climate change have already been breached. We have so little time. How do we hurry up the process? Like getting to 50% reduction of carbon emissions only 7 years from now. Let you think about that. I can answer the next one. Jacob says, I'm surprised to hear that it took 10 years. What the original intent was actually the connection where the film starts, the connection between child malnourishment and the gender roles, getting the men involved in the cooking and all of that. That was going to be the film until Anita said, hey, wait a minute, why is this happening here? We're dealing with climate change and it's really coming from over there. I want to go talk to them. So that's how it shifted. Any quick comments, Nateo or Akilah, to that question about the tipping point and how do we hurry up? How do we accelerate this process?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dr. Akilah might have more information on like soil and its power than I might have, but I really we can get really caught up in doom scrolling about how it's the end of the world and it all like is horrible and why even do anything at this point. And I really want to urge us to take all of that energy and all of that internal chaos and channel it into actually doing something like regenerating the soil in your own backyard. We have to stop waiting for people to do things for us at this point, and we just have to start. But I know Dr. Akilah probably has way more like tangible things we can do, so I wanted to pass it off for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, Nateo. Thank you for saying that. And just to piggyback off what you're saying as far as the soil goes is, if you see any bare soil, plant a cover crop. I mean, that's like the least you can do. That's the simplest thing you can do, is just plant a cover crop. If you notice the trees, like I said earlier, if you notice the trees around your house don't look as verdant as you think that they should, they have several forest preserve websites and arborists and people like that you can contact. They have apps that you can find out how best to do that, to help the trees in your neighborhood. Some other things you can do is you can learn to build a water filter so that you can that's a survival skill that we all are going to have that competence. I would say if you can, learn to compost if you can. Learn to, spend your money in a different way. I don't want to tell you how to do that, but spend your money differently, especially going back to the person about the tipping with the carbon emissions. We're the only people that can make that change, right? So if we, move away from the way of life that we have and move to more organic methods, more in harmony and alignment with the earth, I would say that. But like as the young lady said on the film, we have to change our lifestyle values. And so when we're all ready to do that, I believe we will see change.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Raj Patel, the director, has been called a troublemaker, and he actually says we all have to become activists, and law breaking is required. So we're just going to add that to the mix. So creating some trouble is often required, but some great ideas. Let's move into action. This is the third leg of our stool here at One Earth Film Fest, is to get you all excited if you aren't already. And I love if we stay with that theme of like falling in love with creative solutions, the creativity of the solutions. So feel into your heart. What feels like something you might love to do? Great ideas have already been brought up here. And I want to, I think my team will throw up a slide too about, oh my gosh, amazing Amanda Gorman, who I also love, called us to action in her poem Earthrise, where she says, there's no rehearsal. The time is now, now, now. Earth, pale blue dot, we will fail you not. And we heard both of our panelists tonight talk about that responsibility. Feel that in there too. So it's time for us to ask ourselves that question. Are we willing to create change? Are we willing to do something new, to a new habit, spend our money differently, fall in love with the soil? So I'd like to put it to each of you. And I know we've been in this rhythm. Maybe I should just let Dr. Akilah go first this time. And, what actions can people take? And I know you've already opened this up. We'll have a slide with ideas, but what else would you say, Akilah?
I would say figure out what's in your community. What are the assets in your community, and begin partnering with those assets and figuring out creative ways to build community. I would also say on a more political front, be more aware of what's happening in your community as far as planning goes. So get more involved in how community planning is happening, because it's really important to understand what's happening in your community, because you want to make sure that how your community is being planned is for you to thrive, right? And that goes from climate change to eating to you just being mentally and spiritually healthy and physically healthy, making sure that all those things are there for you and the people that are like-minded like you in your community. So you can get involved with that. If you're in the city of Chicago, the city of Chicago does have a planning department. Make sure that you look at that. That's one way to really get involved with understanding planning. I would say another thing is expand your author list. So if you find yourself only listening or reading one person's or people's ideals, expand that so that you can see other points of view. So that shift in that narrative, that internal narrative that you're telling yourself, can also be expanded. And I'll stop there and let Nateo have an opportunity.
Yeah, and let us just breathe that all in. Take notes if you want. We will send you the recording of this and that kind of thing too. But if something is feeling really alive for you right now, jot it down somewhere so you remember to do that tomorrow. Thanks, Dr. Akilah. Nateo.
Yeah, I mean, just get into it, y'all. Get into it. Like, find your community, find your nature family. Like there's one in your community. I bet you there is. And going back to like, don't let stuff lead you into despair, right? There is an author. Her name is Mary. I can't remember her last name, but she wrote the book called Garden Awakening, and she actually said that if we were to convert all of our lawns into native gardens, we would see climate change reversing itself within 3 years. But we're not doing that, right? We're not doing that right now. And it's something that we could very easily do. And so to Dr. Akilah's point, get into your municipality's leadership and be like, why do you all have so much grass? Why don't you all have more natives? So get into some trouble, put pressure on these municipal leaderships, because as much as Dr. Akilah's groups are putting pressure and I'm putting pressure and Cicero, like, they just think that we're a couple of angry activists in the neighborhood. And we have to show them that it's their entire community who is mad. It's not just, my group and Dr. Akilah's group. It's the whole neighborhood. And so, yeah, get into some trouble, get into some trouble. That's all I can say.
Yes. And you both have given us such great language and ideas to really be more active, even as we think and speak and move in the world around us. I'm so grateful.
I was going to say,
that.
Susan, tell everyone to grow some food. We have a grow your own groceries campaign. Get a grow bag, some soil, some seeds. There you go with some food. We even got videos for how to cook things, how to prepare food. So.
And it's so fun. It just makes you feel so good, right? Yeah. Okay, great. So you'll share those resources with us too. How to, all those how-tos. Yeah, that's really great. So before we pull that up, and I thank you, so much here, so many layers, and I'd love to give you each just a chance if there's something on your heart that you want to speak to our audience before I bring us to a close. I could talk to y'all for another 2 hours, but.
Yeah, I think the last thing that I want to say is that we really need to get away from this narrative that nurturing the earth is something that makes you inferior, and it makes you inferior because it's feminine, right? Like, we need to get away from that. We need to get away from that entirely, because the reason that we have allowed the environment to be degraded to the point that we have is because we view it as this soft thing that is feminine, right? And that tells us so much about just what we've accepted as the dominant culture, and I think we just need to get away with that, right? Nurturing is a skill that belongs to everybody, regardless of gender. We all need to know how to do it. And so, if you got some husbands, some boyfriends, some mans in your life that don't want to nurture things, I'm gonna need you all to have some conversations with them about how this is a life skill. It's a survival skill, and so yeah, that's really the last thing I wanted to say about that.
Beautiful. It brings us full circle to the beginning of the movie and the original purpose of the movie. Awesome. Great. Thank you. Dr. Akilah, your last word? What's on your heart?
I'll end with my favorite African proverb, and it goes, if you want to go quickly, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together.
Yes. Oh my
Thank
gosh.
you.
Well, yeah, it's been amazing to be together in community with both of you tonight. I'm beginning to unpack this powerful film, and oh my gosh, I just feel so inspired and really grateful for your generosity, and excited to learn even more about you. Maybe see you live and in person in the world. Great. So I will pull up a slide. Our amazing tech team pull up a slide with some of these action items. And I also invite our audience to start throwing in the chat, what are you going to do? Having seen this and heard this and been here. There's some great love, Nateo and Dr. Akilah, if you take. So I would love to know what you all are up to. What are you willing to change, to say yes to? What are you going to nurture? What are you going to fall in love with? Where are your peaks? You can't hear me? You can. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting a note. You can't hear me. Great. So hopefully we can have something in the chat coming out. Maybe can the audience hear me? Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, that is our slide. I'm ready to turn the tide. Help us out with our theme. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, good. Awesome. And then if we could have the slide for the action items, and we will follow up everybody with, as I said, a recording, the chat. You'll get all the resources from tonight. To me, the most important thing is what is most alive for you right now that you maybe want to do some journaling about, make a commitment to, start researching. I want to invite you, starting next week, we have an idea to have a book discussion group, and there's a great book called All We Can Save. And so we're going to start next week. Weekly, we're going to have a discussion group around that book and stay together, continue the conversation between now and our Earth Day Fest. So I invite you all to that. And again, just looking what you feel compelled to do. To learn more about our panelists there, I know I've seen some notes in the chat. how to find them. Again, share about what you just experienced and use the hashtags OEFF2022 and hashtag turn the tide. That would help us out. Of course, if you found value in today's event, we invite your donations to help support us. That helps us continue. We have things going on nearly year round at this point. So, and thanks to our tech team and everybody who helps behind the scenes. And of course, last but not least, a huge thanks to our audience. Thank you all for being here. And I can't wait to hear what you're all up to in the world following this. So one last round of applause to all of us, and as a way to get us excited and move forward from here. So take care and have a wonderful night.